like a platform that generates all the data, and then our partners like vulnerability team, they can extract this data from our dashboard and then run their own analytics on top of data and make sense of the data. And that's the goal of our analytics platform. So with this brief introduction, I'd like to pass it to Will. Will, thank you very much for accepting our invite to be in this panel, the webinar, and I'll pass it to you, and then you can talk about the project further.
Great, thanks, Asad. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here to present our LATAMS project here in Nashville. As Asad already mentioned, special thanks to Nashville DOT. I am just a lowly participant on the project. They are the leaders who brought this team together and made this all happen, and have the vision to drive this forward. The LATAMS project is a US DOT SMART grant, and so we'd also like to thank US DOT for their support of the project. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our entire team, which, as you heard, includes ourselves here at Vanderbilt, Nashville DOT, University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee State University, and AECOM. So we have a huge team here that really helps drive things forward and makes all of this happen. So special thanks to them, even though I'm your presenter for today. I'd like to first lay out some of the challenges here in Nashville. So Nashville is an extremely fast-growing city. That comes with it a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. So at the moment, I think we have a lot of opportunities moving forward to remake the transportation system for multimodal use cases. So we have an upcoming transit referendum that addresses pedestrian improvements through sidewalk expansion, vulnerable road user safety, improvements to transit across the city, as well as upgrades to our signal system and the efficiency of the road network. And so we're really seeing Lidar as a potential tool in the toolbox to move all of those agenda items forward at the same time. So this is a really key moment for the city of Nashville, and we're really excited about the role that technology and Lidar can play in that future. Our SMART grant in particular is really focused on pedestrian and vulnerable road user safety. So this is an area that's truly difficult to collect data on and make really informed decisions about. We certainly have ways to study road user safety and address Vision Zero goals through interventions, but the data really hasn't gotten to the point where we understand these things at a really deep level like we might on other areas of the transportation system. So this project was really about applying some of these more advanced tools for data collection and analysis, and creating and deploying tailored solutions for addressing our pedestrian and vulnerable road user safety. Nashville has an identified high injury network, and this project is deployed in North Nashville on that high injury network, and that area is also one of our underserved communities, and is very poised to benefit from a lot of these improvements. So we come from the transportation research side and have really kind of made a push into ITS and transportation infrastructure recently. But our familiarity with Lidar was really in the connected and automated vehicle space. This is an area that has benefited tremendously from the technology, and I think really has pushed the industry forward in developing and robustifying that technology. But as a consequence, we now have a really powerful tool to use for ITS on the infrastructure side. We're taking sensors that Ouster has developed previously and their perception engine that they've developed previously, and deploying that on our roadways at intersections in fixed locations. In concept, it's doing the same thing that you would in the automated driving task, identifying vehicles and perceiving the environment. It's just doing that at an intersection for the purpose of collecting data on all objects that pass through there. So in the intersection context, we usually have two sensors that cover the blind spots of each other and minimize occlusion from vehicles. And like I said, we are able to classify all objects at the intersection, which isn't always possible with every ITS technology. Not only are we able to detect when those objects are in specific portions of the intersection, but importantly, we're able to get the trajectories of each one of those objects. And those object trajectories are extremely important in the types of high resolution analytics that we want to perform for safety. I'll also mention, Assad already alluded to this, but the ability for the Lidar installed at an intersection to also help out with traffic management. And so we're working on at the moment getting our Lidar connected directly to the signal controller at each one of these installations, and using that and piloting that for Nashville, at least, as an intersection actuation technique. So this is an area that we're currently working on. Obviously, Ouster has done this multiple times already, but like I said, this we sort of see as one of the technologies that can suit multiple needs and address multiple challenges simultaneously. So I'll just highlight this quick recording of some of the data that came off of one of our intersections. This event we saw pretty early on, and it depicts a sort of near miss event between a pedestrian and a vehicle. So you'll see this pedestrian here sort of in the center of the video crossing the street as the light was already red, and then as they get to the curb, very shortly thereafter, a vehicle passes by. I believe this actually happened at night, so visibility was diminished at this time. But this we saw, very early on in the project, and really encouraged us as to the proof of concept that this really can work and help us identify these events and these safety critical incidents, out of the box, and with high resolution to understand each one of them. So I'd also like to highlight sort of the rapid deployment here and how quickly this project really got moving and got to the mature point that it is today. So these US DOT SMART grants, again, are focused on implementation, but as many of you probably know, that implementation isn't always just an immediate process. So back in the end of 2023 and early 2024, we did a lot of coordination with the team and got the project off the ground and began talking with Ouster about the particular sites that we were looking at, what kind of considerations we needed to make for each site, and how we were going to actually get this stuff deployed. At that time, I had virtually no experience with Lidar in practical terms, and some on our team certainly had. Chattanooga has an existing deployment and has worked with the technology extensively, but we were sort of new to it in Nashville, and this timeline in the middle here, Q2 of 2024, and recently here in Q3, those 6 months are really where the project was able to deploy our pilot installation, collect a massive amount of data that really validated the technology and the use cases in our minds, and then install the rest of our intersections across the target corridor. So those 6 months were an extremely rapid pace. There were, the entire team was pitching in on all aspects. There were a ton of activities happening in parallel, but this really, I think, in my mind, goes to show how, as Assad mentioned, a turnkey solution. We were able to install devices quickly, get those networked into our data infrastructure, turn around analyses, and continue on with the project in a very short period of time. And that speaks to how ready the technology is for prime time. Moving forward, we have a couple things that we're still working through. We actually are deploying a mobile Lidar trailer, so that's going to be put out at its first deployment location very soon here. I mentioned that permanent signal integration for actuation, and some continued technical coordination with Ouster for how we can scale the system up and really unlock the full potential. One activity that's been a part of our project since the beginning is public engagement and workforce development. So we've spent a lot of time talking to the North Nashville community, residents, one-on-one, as well as sort of at public meetings, in order to tell them about what our goals are here and tell them about the technology. We've also worked with our local contractors who deploy ITS technology and gotten them hands-on experience with Lidar technology, since they might not have had that before. So those hands-on workshops where the technology or the whole system set up at an intersection is not particularly complicated, but if it's the first time you're seeing it, then it really helps to have first seen it in a lab, understand what you're going to do once you get out to the field. All the preparation and education that's done in a nice controlled environment is worth a lot of time messing around with things out in the field. So it has really helped us to familiarize our project partners early and try to get as many of them involved as possible. We've also tried to engage the academic community and some of our people who are interested in data analysis. So we've published some data analysis tools and also a snippet of our data we've collected here in Nashville as part of an effort to get others engaged in the pursuit of using this data and these systems for addressing safety concerns. So this is just the beginning of our data sharing. We hope to really expand that over the next few months and coming years. We've heard people very excited about the idea that they can see this sort of high resolution data for an entire corridor and understand how the corridor is operating from a multimodal perspective across all road users. So I'll quickly go through some of our pilot installation here. So this is, I think, another lesson that we learned throughout the project, is that doing a pilot installation and kind of ironing out the kinks in our own process was really an accelerator for the whole project. Trying to do everything all at once from the very beginning would have been really challenging, but getting a pilot installation out here early and learning our way around everything was hugely beneficial. So our pilot installation began with just some basic bench testing. This is something kind of we all take for granted, but I mentioned I had never worked hands-on with Lidar at this point. So we built a little benchtop rig here in our office. We plugged everything in, got it all networked together, installed the sensors on a temporary little stand here in the office, and really learned a lot through this process. Just the act of going through, hooking everything up, and trying our hand at the technology was a learning experience. And from that, we basically took that entire little rig that we constructed in the office and just took that straight out to the intersection. So here you see some bucket trucks installing the sensors on the poles here, and running our Ethernet cable in underground conduit. But then, what you don't see is that we just pulled that little rack of equipment out of a car and stuck it in the traffic cabinet in the upper corner, and plugged the sensor cables in, and got the little rack some power, and we were online. So this entire process took around 3 to 4 hours, and this was our very first one. So that time improved thereafter, but this speaks to, again, how ready the technology is to be deployed, and how quickly we go from unpacking sensors from a box to getting data flowing off of an intersection. This is just a quick diagram from Ouster's installation manual. This shows you sort of the general setup here in kind of one-line diagram, where we've got our edge computer in the middle. That would be situated in the traffic cabinet along with its power supplies and things. And then we basically just have two Cat6 Ethernet cable runs to the sensors. They break that Cat6 power and data out through a little junction box and feed that to the sensor. But the amount of equipment that's installed on the pole is extremely minimal, and it's one cable per sensor. Very straightforward installation. We also have the ability to connect in the field and make sure everything's looking good. But again, like I said, once that computer is online and on the network, we're able to reach that remotely and do a lot of that software configuration. Right now, a lot of our installation in Nashville is running on cellular modems, which is a good temporary solution. For us, we're really focused on pulling a lot of data back, and we have noticed that cellular connections are not 100% reliable for that data offload, although that doesn't stop the edge computer from doing its job inside the cabinet and continuing with its perception. So here's a finished installation photo from that first pilot intersection. You'll see on the bottom photo the one LiDAR sensor installed on one of the vertical poles, and then the full rig with all of its power supplies and everything inside of the traffic cabinet. We went a little bit overboard with adding a couple things for this first installation and actually refined that for future installations, which you'll see here in a minute. And again, very soon after we got all of this installed, this is a photo or a screenshot taken from Blue City less than 48 hours after that installation. So this particular photo shows the out of crosswalk events from that intersection. So this is just a heat map showing you where the pedestrian activity was concentrated, excluding the crosswalk zones. So again, Assad helped us configure this remotely. We got this, all the sensors and everything aligned in software remotely, and got data flowing within just a couple hours. And then less than 2 days later, we have a nice picture of what our problems are looking like at that intersection. This particular location has an interesting pedestrian activity pattern with people coming through between two of these apartment buildings and crossing the road without using the crosswalk at the intersection just because of proximity. So this started confirming some of the suspicions we had about the intersection, but really put data to it and gave us the evidence that we needed in order to do something about this in the future. So I'll come back to some of the interventions that we did regarding this data, but again, highlight here that this all happened on an extremely tight timeline and really turns a long data collection and investigation process into a very short turnaround, getting analytics back within just a couple days. So I'm going to switch over really quick to give a live demo of Blue City and show you that particular intersection that we were working with. So I'll go ahead and jump over to, so this is a live feed of that particular pilot intersection. In fact, you actually just saw a large semi truck come through that intersection. But this is the live view that's coming off of the LiDAR computer that's installed there at 26th and Clarksville Pike. That computer is running all of the point cloud perception and object classification on that unit. So the point clouds are an extremely large amount of information, all the measurements from the LiDAR sensors themselves, and all of that is processed down into object detections, which let's see, you see a vehicle here waiting on the stoplight, a pedestrian here crossing the road, a couple of vehicles here coming to a stop, and all of that is done on board the unit, and then we're just viewing the result of that. So this background that you're seeing here is just that, the background that's not anything classified in the foreground as part of an object detection. We've got a bus here that's crossing the intersection, and a second bus. This is actually the site of a new transit center for the city of Nashville. So we see a lot of transit activity in this area. I'll also show our Blue City platform here. So if we go over to 26th and Clarksville, this is that same intersection. I'll show you that out of crosswalk heat map now. So this is just showing, I believe, one day. But if I go back to, go back to the past month and look at all the data that's been collected as part of those out of crosswalk events. So I selected an extremely large amount of data here, but you really see a lot of out of crosswalk activity at this intersection. And a lot of it is concentrated in this particular area around these apartment buildings crossing across the street to a convenience store. We also get a lot of people crossing on this side street outside the crosswalk in order to, again, to access that convenience store, as well as some other locations behind there. That's just one section of the Blue City platform. I don't actually even have time to show every section, but I will show also the speeds that we're measuring off of the intersection. So this is going to give you speed by approach. So you can classify by your sort of primary and secondary roads. You can classify by the mode. Let's see, go to just today. You can classify by by vehicle type and mode, so we can look at pedestrian as well. But here we have southbound, westbound, northbound, eastbound, and those vehicle speeds are differentiated by your primary route is going to be running quite a bit faster. We're seeing an average around 30 to 35 miles per hour crossing through that intersection. Your side streets, of course, are going to be a little bit biased by the fact that most vehicles are coming to a stop. But we can also see our speed distributions and look at some of those excessive speeds that unfortunately we see in this corridor. And of course, counts are also available for each one of these objects because, again, that the core data that's produced here is trajectory data, sort of the time and space location of every object that's detected within the field of view. We can essentially calculate just about anything from that trajectory data. So boiling that down into counts of individual objects is extremely simple. We're just looking at where each object was detected and able to put that into again, like this is southbound left turn, southbound right turn, and southbound straight through. So taking those trajectories, looking at not just counts, but then turning movements as well. So trajectory data we in sort of the analytics world call the gold standard of traffic data because it allows us to understand so much. Counts are just the beginning, speeds are just the beginning. We can look at signal performance metrics as well, which we hope to implement this fall. So I'll jump back over, and if anyone has any questions about the Blue City platform, I'm sure Assad would be happy to answer during Q&A. Another visualization that we developed for this project, or sort of our main visualization for the project, this was developed by one of my colleagues, Matt Bunting, here at the Institute for Software Integrated Systems. But taking just that data from one intersection, once we cut that, the systems deployed throughout the corridor, we're able to get all of those together on a single unified live view. So here you're looking at a recording here from a couple days ago, but this is showing the live location at this time of every single object detected by any of our installations and showing those objects moving throughout the corridor in real time. You might have seen a little purple bus as well. So whenever the LiDAR classifies a bus object, we actually put a skin on it that is reminiscent of the WeGo transit system here in Nashville. You also saw Matt click in this demo on a transit stop. We have GTFS integration as part of this live viewer. These purple rings around the intersections that you see are sort of the approximate field of view of the sensors. You also see these little white discs around the intersection. That's the sort of exaggerated location of all of these sensors as they're installed. Since then, Matt has actually integrated VR into this. So in fact, you can throw on a VR headset in our office and sort of walk around in a way the entire corridor. And it's a little bit scary when you're in VR on the roadway and seeing one of those buses come towards you. But this live viewer is not just a showpiece. It's really something that has helped us understand how this project is working. When we're looking at transit performance, we can see what is coming up ahead of all of these buses and what might be throwing off their schedule. We get a holistic view of the corridor, and that's really speaks to the power of the data that's coming from our LiDAR installations, that we're able to understand the full picture of an intersection, a corridor, and eventually one day we hope the entire city at this really fine-grained level. All right, just a couple notes. Yeah, you saw the transit integration as part of this. We hope to expand transit integration in the future. This has actually been running in the NDOT Traffic Management Center. So again, this is just on Clarksville Pike right now, but it gives them a live view of exactly what's happening out there on that corridor, and hopefully more in the future. We also integrated this into iOS and Android, so this runs natively in a browser and scales for mobile. So we can pull this up while we're out in the field to make sure that we can validate our data. And just for fun, of course, Matt got this working on a smartwatch. Maybe in the future we'll be able to walk around the corridor and validate that data on our wrists and have a little bit of fun with that. More broadly within the community, I think speaking to our public engagement as part of the project, we've seen really strong community support, and I think this we listened to the desires of the community. One thing we heard early on was that residents didn't necessarily want more cameras in their community, and had some concerns about privacy because of that. So when the project initially had explored some camera options for collecting data, and that was something we heard loud and clear that was not something that the community wanted. And given that LiDAR produces anonymized data, was a really big selling point. So we heard that direct from community members and tried to incorporate that feedback. So I think that speaks to a lot of the support that we have gotten because we did that engagement. And so now just a few quick words on the full deployment. You saw our pilot up at 26 in Clarksville. There's some photos on the left of that, sort of our traffic cabinet style installation. And then we actually, for some of these other locations, they had legacy traffic cabinets that had absolutely no remaining space in them. And so we actually integrated a little sort of auxiliary cabinet where we can install the LiDAR computer along with power supplies and other cabling, and sort of attach that to one of these legacy traffic cabinets and still retain all the functionality while not disturbing what's going on inside the traffic cabinet and having to move equipment around and without having to upgrade that. So this was just something that we did because of the site-specific needs, but we might need this in the future, and I'm sure other cities have some of these smaller traffic cabinets still kicking around, and these can be upgraded as well just by adding a little bit of space. I also mentioned that mobile trailer. This is a new addition to the project. We only received this a few weeks ago, but this we're looking at as a solution to collect temporary data on problematic locations. So while installing LiDAR at an intersection is a quick process once all the approvals are in place and everything is ready, it's definitely not going to be faster than just dragging this trailer over to a particular location and leaving it for a couple days. So because of that really fast data insight that we get, we can deploy this trailer and collect data for a week and be off to the next location, and then sort of analyze all of that in real time. This particular unit, we're hoping, gives us over a month of runtime using its solar and generator and battery backup. Another tool in the toolbox, and we're excited to report on that once we get a couple months of runtime under our belt. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about data validation. This is a really important component of the project because this was sort of a new technology for Nashville, and we wanted to see how this performed as a complete ITS solution to capture all the data that we needed. And if that data is not high quality, then it doesn't matter what you're collecting. So overall, the takeaway is that we've been extremely impressed with all of our data validation metrics and performance indicators. We used a variety of methods to go through this validation, including manual in some cases. And I'll share some of those with you. This is definitely not an exhaustive presentation of all of these, but gives you an idea of the work we've done to validate this as a solution that's ready. So pedestrian, again, with the focus on pedestrian safety for the project, the pedestrian counting and classification was, of course, sort of the most basic metric of are you doing a good job addressing pedestrian needs for these locations. We seeded our data validation day with some extra pedestrians. So we took video of the intersection for a couple minutes while we were sending people across the intersection to add some pedestrian count here. The public helped us out during this time just by the background demand for the intersection. But we had over 100 pedestrian crossing instances and validated each and every one of those with video. So in this case, we had full detection of every single one of those people walking across the intersection at all locations around it. When we expand that to the entire corridor, we're not able to send people out there to every one of these locations, but we did do some analysis on this and really kind of tried to see where our heaviest utilized areas were and whether people were crossing at the intersection, within sort of the signalized zone of the intersection, or outside of that signalized zone at sort of an area we would classify as the mid-block area. And so you see on the left just a summary of where people are crossing. We do have a lot of mid-block crossings in this area. They're pretty dense intersections throughout here, but just a ton of pedestrian activity, and the volume of the corridor allows people to cross at mid-blocks. And so that's certainly a concern moving forward, as well as pretty heavy nighttime crossings. So not the majority here for sure, but as we know, nighttime crossings are a big safety risk for the pedestrians. And finally, those out of crosswalk events that I mentioned earlier, we saw that heat map generated by Blue City during the period of that pilot installation. And thereafter, we decided to try and implement an intervention in order to try and divert some of those pedestrians over to the crosswalk at that particular intersection. So we installed a temporary fence here along this area next to the intersection where people were just walking across the road. This is just like a kind of construction fence that you'd use at a job site. And so this was left up for 2 weeks, and we saw those crossings at that sort of mid-block zone drop off dramatically. So that intervention had an immediate effect, and we were seeing that on the day that we implemented it. We were kind of running these analytics throughout the day, and and saw that drop off really, really precipitously and stay down at its low levels throughout the duration of that 2-week intervention. Some of those pedestrians did kind of walk upstream of the fence and cross up there, but a good number went over to the intersection and used the signalized crossing. We also changed that light timing to facilitate immediate crossing for the pedestrians. We haven't yet looked at other pedestrian countermeasures, but again, are really excited about the potential that the technology and its rapid analytics potential has for looking at some of these pedestrian countermeasures in really fine-grained detail. Where do they work? How do they work best? What problems exactly do they address? And I'm not aware of the kind of detailed, broad studies that let us decide which of these are best to use and in which cases. So we're excited to try some of these out throughout Nashville and kind of take a really data-driven approach to pedestrian countermeasures and addressing safety. The near miss detection is certainly a big component of our project. You saw the event that was recorded earlier from one of those near misses. So Blue City collects some of these events on its own and has its own analytics for that, which I'll show you here in a second. But we took a lot of that data and analyzed it further, trying to see not just where did these events happen, but kind of how severe were a lot of these. So in this case, for near misses, we sort of have two classifications for those. They're a little bit fuzzy in how you determine what exactly is a near miss, but we use a standard measure called post-encroachment time, and this just refers to when objects occupied the same space and the time differential when they occupied that space. So if a pedestrian sort of crosses right behind a vehicle, waiting on them to make a right turn and then kind of walking behind their rear bumper, that would be classified as a near miss, but would have a negative post-encroachment time because the vehicle went first. So those are a secondary concern. They've got to speak to the conflicts between modes at the intersection, but the positive PET values are where we really see safety issues because that's pedestrian crossing first and then having a vehicle cross immediately after them. So you see 4 examples of those positive PET events that are a real concern for us to address. In particular, this sort of northern segment of the intersection that's depicted here, we see a lot of right and left turns conflicting with pedestrians and causing some of those near miss events. So we went through and manually validated a good chunk of these, and that was part of our data analysis and validation for the Blue City platform. And are very impressed by the classification here and the ability to replay those events. And so this is what that looks like when you go into the Blue City analytics platform. It gives you one of those heat maps to understand the locations of these events, and also lets you look at that. Which object went first? Was it the pedestrian or the vehicle going first? To sort of differentiate between those positive and negative values. Also lets you set the threshold for post-encroachment time and see events based on really severe, like 1 second post-encroachment times, or if you want to look more broadly at kind of just general conflicts with a PET value of something like 3 seconds, you can increase that threshold and see more of those events. And then lets us look at different classifications. So we can look at bike PET events in particular if we wanted to, as well as those involving large vehicles or buses. So a lot of power here in the analytics, and our validation was just us making sure that that the data was high quality and we can really speak to that fact that all of these are genuine events and are really that's our safety analytics there. Finally, vehicle speed is a concern on this particular corridor. We actually brought out one of our instrumented vehicles to measure the speed that the vehicle is reporting itself from the actual speedometer and versus the measurements that the LiDAR is giving at an intersection. So we measured an extremely small average error between the vehicle reported speed and the LiDAR measured speed. So this was kind of to the highest degree that you could possibly get those speed values. And that's an extremely, an error of less than a meter per second is extremely tight tolerance there. So when we're looking at these histograms and box plots of speed across the intersection, we have a really high degree of confidence in this data. And unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of speeding activity at some of these locations. In order to address that on a short timeline, we brought out some temporary speed trailers and put those throughout the corridor, trying to let drivers know, what is the speed and how fast are you going. And we saw a reduction in what we call super speeders, those vehicles traveling more than 15 or 20 miles per hour, depending on the posted speed at that location. And we saw those super speeders decrease significantly by 30 and 35% at the two areas that we put out these trailers. So whether that's a durable change or not, we're going to need to look at further studies. But this, again, speaks to identifying the problem very quickly from the data, putting out some treatment there, evaluating that immediately and over the next couple of days. And that turnaround time is miles faster than we can get through sort of manual methods and other data analysis methods. And the last thing I'll mention is that we've been looking at availability and uptime of the system as well. And our only significant event was during an entire power outage of the entire corridor because of a severe weather event, and knocked out power for multiple blocks. So that was, if you discount that severe weather, then we're looking at over 99.9% uptime. And again, the biggest issue we've run into as part of the project is just dealing with some of those cellular connection limitations, because that's just when you're pulling high data rates for our data archival and analytics, the cellular modem bogs down a little bit. So we're hoping to get some of these on the fiber optic network that Nashville is rolling out, and then improve communication to match the high resilience and uptime of the LiDAR system itself. All right, so I'll conclude by reminding everybody that our SMART grant really was focused on pedestrian vulnerability and improving safety for all road users. And we've really seen that that the LiDAR technology can do not just that, but a lot more, and address sort of all the multimodal challenges that Nashville is experiencing throughout this corridor. That's part of our project, and we hope throughout much more of the city in the future. Blue City has helped us a ton in this respect, and also we've had, because we get that trajectory data, we've had the opportunity to validate that those analytics and all of that data ourselves. So we're extremely optimistic about the pathway for the technology moving forward, and really appreciate all the help from Ouster in getting us up to speed, helping us get these deployed, and their continued support. So with that, I think we've got some time for Q&A.
Amazing. Thanks for all that, Will. It's still fun to see all that stuff every time. Good. So thank you, everybody, for submitting questions. Just a reminder, if you have a question, to put it in the Q&A box, but you've all been submitting quite a few, and so we appreciate it. So the first, I'm doing a little bit of grouping of the questions just so we can get through as much kind of content as we can. We had a good number of questions about the range of the LiDAR system itself. So either a question about how far from the trailer can you detect objects, how far back can you from the stop bar can objects be detected, and a question on if you integrated a camera into the trailer system. So maybe Will, I'll let you start because some of it's a little specific to the trailer. But
yeah, Assad, do you want to touch on the range first, and then I'll get a summary of the trailer?
cool.
Sure. If I can share my screen, I can quickly show some. So let me see. Share my screen. Perfect. So we typically use two type of our projects. So this is I'm just connected to one of our current deployment with Colorado DOT. That you basically see the live stream, and this big circle that you see around this Lidar, around this intersection is 50 meters. With our OS1 sensor, we are detecting and classifying vehicles with a radius around 50, 60 meters. Roughly, and with back of a stop line is roughly around 50, 60 meters. But as you can see, we typically see cars further down the road as well. This is for our standard ITS application that we use it for, let's say, stop bar detection use cases. And then we have two LiDARs, and we're using data coming from both LiDARs. There is another one that I want to quickly show. This is another project that we use it for runway detection. It's a highway use case. That's why we are using our OS2 sensor, which is our long-range LiDAR. And if I play this, you can see that this toll lanes that we're covering with this RAM, and it's covering detecting vehicles and classifying around, I would say 100 to 120 meters radius around the LiDAR. So around 200 to 140 meters end to end that we're covering.
Perfect.
Sure, and then I'll mention a couple points on the trailer, some that speak right to the range. This trailer that we ordered actually has a mast height that's quite a bit higher than you'd see at a normal intersection. So that increased height, it actually provides a little bit of an opportunity for setting the trailer back further from the area of concern. So we're able to maybe set back, let's say, 30 feet from sort of the nearest area where you want to detect, and then see out quite a bit, from quite a high vantage point and see over vehicles. So that single sensor that we have on the trailer, kind of that height helps it minimize occlusion. This is above sort of the maybe recommended mounting height, because at an intersection you get an increased area underneath the sensor. But we're exploring Ouster's other sensors as well to help cover that area immediately underneath the trailer, as well as a longer distance area. So summarized by, there's an opportunity to set the trailer back further, which at some of these locations is actually a benefit, because you can't always find areas near the sidewalk or near the intersection to situate a trailer the size of a small car. So by maybe getting into a parking lot that's just out of the city's right of way, we can put the trailer there for a week, borrowing a parking spot from a business, and collect that data. So that's a little bit about the range there. I think I see a number of questions about the trailer, but we're still early days with the mobile setup. We so far have seen all of the data accuracy that we have come to expect from the LiDAR system. It's a little bit of an interesting vantage point, but overall has no problem with classification on the mobile unit. We're just going to, it poses some interesting challenges from our data analytics perspectives of, when you move this to multiple locations, how do you keep track of exactly where it is, and how to calibrate all of that data to sort of the base map of the city. But overall, we're really impressed, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to report back some extra results from that, maybe in one of the newsletters or something, once we have that trailer out for a little while.
Perfect. Given looking at the clock, I think this is going to be our last question. So I just want to, before we run out of time, I want to let everybody know we did just get a lot of questions, and thank you everybody for those. we will, if we don't ask the question here, we'll follow up and respond and make sure you get an answer to your question. So if your question isn't asked here, just don't worry, we will get you an answer to that question. The last grouping, I think, Assad, this will be probably primarily in your court, but we got some questions about traffic signal control and what the LiDAR system, what specifically the LiDAR system do as far as traffic signal control. Is there anything beyond traditional traffic signal control capabilities that it offers? And can it integrate with an older TS1 interface?
Yeah, for older TS1 controllers, we use draw contact. So we have a standard IP to draw contact adapter that we use typically for those to support those older controllers that they don't support SDLC or NTCIP. So that's the question to it. That's the answer to that question. But in general, when it comes to the actuation use case, I'm just going through the live view from the same intersection that was showing on the point cloud view. This is our, like we call it, digital twin of the intersection. And for this intersection, as you can see, we have both NTCIP and SDLC connection. We use NTCIP to pull traffic light status for our signal performance measures and red light violation. And then we use SDLC for feeding data or actuation per channel. So it's simply drawing virtual loops and then assigning to a specific channel. And then as you probably can see that we have some virtual loops on crosswalk for pedestrian actuation as well. So it's beyond just the stop bar detection. So where this technology can go down the road is, as you probably know, a lot of optimization engines are looking into more advanced trajectory-based optimization instead of just on and off based on stop bar detection. And that's really one of the benefits of LiDAR, is because you can always see the trajectory of the objects all the way from getting into the coverage area till they leave it. So you can actually get accurate turning movement counts based on the trajectory of the object.
Perfect. Well, we are right at time, so why don't we leave it there? I want to thank everybody for joining. We will, again, just a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar. So if you missed anything at the beginning, you can go ahead and watch that again and catch all of Will's presentation. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. We'll follow up with all of your questions, and we hope to see you again on an Ouster webinar soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day. And thank you, Will and Assad, for joining here. Apologies, I'm not doing my job well at all today. Will, you did